Good evening, Amudai Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus on the broadcast and a big exclusive to the Sunday Guardian. Ex-Taliban commander Ehsan Ullah Ehsan has now left the ex-ISI chief of Pakistan exposed. In the article, Ehsan speaks about how Pak and the ISI begged the Taliban to help with terror attacks and infiltration in Kashmir. Yes, he's further exposed how the former ISI chief, General Shuja Pasha, had called the TTP a necessity and gave it an incentive to become crucial to Pakistan's plans and designs. General Pasha had also written that if TTP accepted the demands, the TTP would not just be able to demonstrate its abilities in Waziristan, but the whole of Pak would be open for the TTP, and the cadre of the TTP and their children would be able to work in Pak by getting education from educational institutions in Islamabad and Peshawar. So clearly, of course, this letter and article, of course, exposing Pakistan completely. To further analyze this story, we have a special panel with us. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Defence Analyst and Director, India Foundation, is live with us. Jitendra Ojha, National Security and Geopolitical Analyst, is also joining us live on the broadcast. We are being joined by RVS Mani, former Under Secretary in General Security, also at this point, and Sumit Peer, political commentator and analyst, joins us live as well. RVS Mani, let me begin with you first. Your initial reading into Ehsanullah's article, into Ehsanullah's statement exposing the Pakistan state, exposing the ISI completely.
Yeah, it is in terms of what has come out in the public domain. It is quite a revelation indeed. But the footprints, and we were, without the names being there, we were getting some sort of, say, Shuja Pasha was the DG ISI during the period. The maximum number of terror attacks happened in India. Whether it is a 2611, whether it is a Pune, whether it is prior to that also a few more, like had happened. See, 2007 to 2010 or more or less was his tenure. In fact, 2008, after the Mumbai attack, he was supposed to come to Delhi, but later on things changed and the decisions changed and so many things also altered. So Shuja Pasha's trying to recruit other such allies into supporting them in or becoming the foot soldiers. See, even if you see the Samjhauta blast also, it was a sort of outsourcing of the ISA activities to somebody called organized crime syndicate called led by Arif Kasmani. Similarly, these type of circumstanced the organizations, outfits were given the outsourcing of the Pakistani agenda so that the mist becomes much more muddier, so that mistier or something like that, so that it is very difficult to again pinpoint the blame on the, it will be a second generation or a third generation or a fourth generation level, only the ISI will be back on the back. So this type of outfits were used. This is a time that it has really come out when the outfit refused. The Haqqani network had already been compromised, and that is all very well a matter of record. We used to receive a lot of reports during that time. So this is the time that now the names have started coming out, and Shuja Pasha's time was India suffered, I think, the worst when Shuja Pasha was the DG ISI. That's a very clear, and now he was also doing it to this type of, his strategy was doing it to get into this type of outsourcing into third or fourth generation outfits.
Not unknown to India is what you're saying. These devious designs.
Precisely, it is not unknown to you. The pattern which he is revealed is not unknown to us. That is what I mean to say. There's a second generation or third generation or fourth level of outfit being outsourced by a sequence of Suparis or whatever it is. That was happening during at the time. Especially in Kashmir and also in the other parts of the country, this type of terrorist, and the maximum terrorist attack took place at that time. And many of them, like the Indian Mujahideen or Hizbul Mujahideen, were basically the foot soldiers which had been at the last leg at the field level. But prior to that, there are 2, 3, 4 levels in the hierarchy. And ultimately, the hierarchy leading up to the DG ISI. That's very known for us. So there's nothing really new about it. But only thing is the names have come out. It is very, because it was all available in bits and pieces. Now for the public domain, it has become very, very clear. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, let me also bring in at this point Jitendra Ojha, who is also joining us live. Your initial reading into this explosive commentary by Ehsanullah Ehsan. Mr. Ojha was, of course, the ex-Taliban commander What do you read into his revelations? Do you believe it completely exposes Pakistan once again, and really talks about their nefarious designs for Kashmiris, but for peace and security in this entire South Asia region in general?
I think there is absolutely nothing to be surprised about what he has said. People who are handling these matters, they are fully seized of it. And not only this person, when someone like the former president can also admit that they are having assets in Kashmir. So this is not at all to be surprised about. I feel our entire focus has to shift and has to reorient. If we say that if we can only expose what Pakistan is telling lies and expect international community to help us, I think this is not a good approach for a strong, major country, a country which is aspiring to be a major global power. It has to learn to deal with these problems. Sometimes we know what happens. I'm going a little beyond. I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. This is very, very well known. Anyone who has been analyzing these things, they know Pakistan is not only to India, but to civilized world anywhere. The priority of the West would be what? To protect their areas. In one research paper a few months back, I had written that security analysts in Europe have been saying that how Pakistan-Afghan border has been used to infiltrate radical elements in Europe. So leave aside this thing. Their primary target is India. So Mr. Mani has already highlighted, I think we have to shift our approach, and approach has to be a comprehensive all-out approach. Instead of just citing this data and expecting international community to help, we have to devise our strategy. As we said, that we cannot afford any laxity on part of India. It doesn't show good on our part if we say that, look, we are victim. We should stop playing victim card and we should decimate anything which is there. And I would say, Uday, taking opportunity of this thing, that height of this subversion of India and India's institutions was when at the highest level somebody started raising a bogey of Hindu terrorism, because terrorism is not a crime of passion that anybody can just commit it. To sustain this kind of global terror, you require massive infrastructure, logistics and expertise. Last 40, 50 years, Pakistan has been working on this, because you see what Ehsanullah has said about Afghanistan and other involvements. What Europeans are today talking about, European security experts are saying that if Pakistan could facilitate agreement between US and Taliban, what is it which is preventing Pakistan to prevent Taliban attack on US establishments? So Pakistan has discovered this kind of terror as a kind of source of clout and global power. And this kind of terror is sustained not on its own, it is sustained by drug trade. They are having access to in Pakistan, counterfeiting. They are champions all over the world. And most unfortunate part is that they have been counterfeiting currency in India. They have been subverting this thing, and they have been raising resources, because this kind of terrorism has been giving a lot of financial and political clout to people like Shuja Pasa and so many in the Pakistani army, Iraqi and others. So we have to change our strategy. We have to see how can we go about it. In this region, the fight has to be led by India, not in the American way, but in a most cost-effective and most smarter way. And in this process, I say that the first thing is to streamline our institutions, because let me tell you, indirect collaborators of Pakistan terror network are not only Zakir Naik and others, but there are so many other people who are hiding within these establishments, within our own establishments. Uday.
No, that's a valid sentiment that you are espousing. I will come back to a point that you've just raised, Mr. Ojha, and just speak about how what our national security policy should be towards Pakistan and certain elements within Pakistan in just a second. But Sumit, I want to get you in here at this point. Sumit Peer, because Pakistan makes all these false promises as far as Jammu Kashmir is concerned. Kashmir hamare dil mein hai. We care for Kashmiris. We're so upset after Article 370 abrogation and whatnot. But these revelations by Ehsanullah expose how Pakistan is trying to carry out terror in Kashmir, which of course will affect India, but will affect Kashmiris as well. Kashmiris die because of these designs of Shuja Pasha, because of this devious policy, this nefarious policy of Pakistan, which once again stands exposed by a TTP head, by not India, by not someone within Pakistan, but by someone from the Taliban.
Well, first of all, I have to compliment you and your Sunday Guardian. You know why? Because you have got the horse ride the story. people like you and us can comment and write things, but they don't hold such a relevance when the person has himself penned down the piece. So there can be nothing more authentic to this world and to the media community of the India when the person himself who was involved in all this writes this story. So there's no allegation. This is right from the horse's mouth. That's point number one. Point number two is, Uday, if Pakistan is only interested, I call them as Wahhabi, Jihadi, Sunni, Punjabi, Malaysia. That's what Pakistan Army and ISI is about. Look at the plight of people in POK. Look at what have they done to them. Look at the genocide which is happening. They've literally sold the people of POK to Chinese. Look at the way they are getting Baloch daughters married to Han-Chinese. I mean, this is happening in Pakistan. Forget Kashmir. Forget the Indian part of Kashmir. I mean, what are they doing to our POK? What are they doing to the people? They have no affiliation to anybody. They're not bothered about anybody. What they're only bothered about is how to get more and more richer. We know that these all generals have tons of money in United States. They have money everywhere. Their kids study in Harvard. They go to all the best universities. They drive the most expensive cars. And even in Pakistan, their pensions out of the 8 billion difference. That is the reality of Pakistan and its jihad. So this is nothing to do with Kashmir or anybody on the surface. Instantly, Uday, one important point. When you look at ISI, Uday, if you look at the budget and manpower, they rank 20th. But if you look at the activity, Uday, they rank number 1. Today, ISI is active in more than 100 countries. So how is it possible? So that means they have a branch of agents and these outlets or whatever we call them. That is why if you're ranked 20th in terms of budget and manpower, how are you number 1 in terms of creating shit in the world? I'm sorry, I didn't want to use this word, but that is what they create. Creating shit and evil in the world, they're number 1. So obviously your branches, your affiliates, your these outsourced agencies which are working for you. So let's say they can be TPP, they can be anywhere and anywhere. Even in Chechnya, Uday, a footprint of Pakistan and ISI was found by Russians. Even in August, they find a footprint. We name a country where a trouble happens and you don't find a Pakistan and ISI there. It is impossible. They have now, it's like a bond which is invisible now. Trouble, terror, Pakistan, they are synonyms to in today's time.
This not only, of course, exposes what's happening in Pakistan, but also exposes Major General Katoch. And I would like your strategic perspective on this. Pakistan's approach and policy towards Afghanistan as well. This is why Pakistan wants a say in Afghanistan, not for peace in Kabul and in the region, but because they want to use the Taliban. They are begging the Taliban, as Ehsan Ullah Ehsan says, to help them carry out terror attacks and infiltration in Kashmir. They are calling the TTP a necessity, giving it an incentive to join Pakistan and in return offering members of the Taliban jobs, offering education to children of the Taliban. This is why they're interested in the Afghanistan region, isn't it? This also exposes Pakistan's approach towards Afghanistan, which the world must see as well.
I think Pakistan's approach to Afghanistan has been very, very basic and logical from their point of view. Their point of view has been very simple. They want to exercise control over what happens in Afghanistan. And in a sense, they want to control Afghan foreign policy. And to that, they have been reasonably successful by using the Afghan Taliban as their strategic assets. Now, that is a secret which everybody knows. They use certain other terror organizations like the Lashkar, the Hizbul, the Jaish as strategic assets against India. And they use the Afghan Taliban similarly to promote their interests in Afghanistan. But I want to talk about the TTP here. Now, the TTP is the only organization as an umbrella organization of 30 plus local terror modules within Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is fighting against the Pakistani state. Now, these people, they don't want them to fight the Pakistani state. They want to divert the attention away from Pakistan, which is why I think they have gone on to their policy of bribing. Okay, we'll give you education facilities. We'll do A, B, C, and D on for you. You fight with us for Kashmir. You fight with us in Afghanistan and all that. But I don't think the TTP is going to be taken in because they have got a totally different agenda. As it is, most of these terrorist groups, whether it is the TTP, the Afghan Taliban, or their Indian counterparts, they in a sense, at least they know each other. But each of them has their own agenda. And I think that agenda is going to be pursued. when you're looking at a response pattern from India, I think I'm totally with what Mr. Oja says and with what Mr. Mani said. We have to take our own line forward. I think there has to be, this is the military mullah complex or the military jihadi complex which Pakistan has promoted. We have to make it very expensive. I think number one is for the Pakistan military. And we have not really made the military bear the pain which they should. And I think it is high time. We have actually increased the cost a little bit, but I think we need to increase that cost many, many times to make them really feel the pinch and say, okay, it's not worth it. The second thing which I think we need to do, and which is, I think, what Mr. Oja actually mentioned it in some manner, it is this complex which we have got within India. You see, this sort of support base cannot be progressed by the Pakistani establishment without having certain elements within India. And I'm not referring to Kashmiris. So that is why when even we have something as serious as the Mumbai blast, we come around with some theory where people go and release books which give out an alternate agenda. When you have a terrorist killed, you have even people targeting the DG police. Now, all this cannot just come out of the open. There is a concerted attempt. I don't know whether these people have been bought or are they being blackmailed. But there is certainly something wrong, and I think we have to clean up within ourselves the fifth column which exists within India. This, I think, is very, very important. There are the two things we need to deal with. Deal with the Pakistan military and deal with our fifth columnists at home. Deal with both of them. And I think to a very large extent, we should be able to handle the problem.
Arvind Mani.
What General Katoch said, I would like to take you to same Sunday Guardian of 22nd April 2018. I had said we had adequate reports, including the JIC report, saying that the civil servants, chairperson of PSUs, the journalists, the judges, parts of judiciary, and the lawyers are being honey-trapped by ISI through several means, including the boys and girls or anything like that who go over to them to get their, seeking their help, network and all. Even something like what Neera Radia was, I don't know whether she was running or not in that format, but such operatives were there. It is, I have said so, and it's a very clear-cut, affirmed record. It is these people who graduate into a sort of a fifth column, as alleged, who say, who will walk in, we will mobilize people to open the court at 3 o'clock and stay Yaqub Man and this other thing. Or everything, every attack has been, the investigation has been challenged, these problems have been. We have to be ruthless. In fact, as I would also say, for get a faster conviction, you need to have a speedy trial procedure even in the NIA or any such offences. There has to be a speedy and simply brought to book. The level of appeals could also be reduced if it is constitutionally also, if we go for it. But we need to get an ecosystem right and also be ruthless about it, about response within India, the supporters of those people within India and outside India. As General Katoch said, we have not inflicted adequate injuries. We need to make it very costly. On the defense side, also on the defense ministry side, also it has to be a ruthless response. Internally, also there is a lot of consolidation and strengthening and integration required in all these matters, and also the handling with this fifth columnist. Whether even in the present case, also there are DGPs who have their own time allowed terror gangs to prosper in their tenures, are now going and petitioning and doing all sorts of things. That's a different story. I don't want to get into it. This type of IPS compromised civil servants are there within the system. 70, more than a lot many of them. We need to clean it up. In fact, in this context, Prime Minister's civil service reforms, I think, would be a very important milestone in or a path-making step in this context. So this is very important to say that the civil service, as well as the journalists and the judges and the lawyers and so many other groups, which are also getting into the system. This is and even the human rights activists.
Okay.
So this is very important.
Mr. Oja, strategically speaking, how should India react to what Ehsanullah Ehsan has said? And in your view, just taking you back a bit into history, why do you believe that the TTP did not heed to the demands of Shuja Pasha? Despite Pakistan and ISI begging Taliban, they did not come on board. Why is that according to you?
First of all, we should not react to anyone, whosoever it may be. We need to have a proactive policy and strategy of our own. And that proactive policy and strategy should depend on who we are, what are our priorities, and accordingly that strategy has to be there. Given our very strength, India has to come up as a major global power, and that is the only way to destroy Islamic radicalism as well as opaque authoritarianism of China. And we have to come out with this thing without caring about anyone, whether Pakistan or even a terrorist or anyone. Secondly, say, why did they not agree to this? Look, once you start, radicalizing people, and you expect that you radicalize them and then you keep them as your stooges, it doesn't always happen. Afghan Taliban may have a reason. They require patronage and support. But, when you start groups like this, splintering is automatic. Splintering is natural. There are interpersonal issues. There are ideological issues. There are other things. So that's the only reason, I suppose, they may not have agreed. But this complex of radicalization was created by Pakistani army itself. I would go further, and if you have any question, I will certainly answer. Regarding your interest in Afghanistan, look, Uday, I always believe that when you wage a war like this, you need war to sustain, and you need resources. So Afghanistan, what does it provide? Afghanistan provides them territory. Afghanistan provides them human resources, because Afghan tribes and Pashtuns, they are very hardy people. They are very easy to manipulate. So that's what Pakistan is looking for. But the most important thing which Pakistan gets from Afghanistan is massive drug trade. UNDCP came out with large number of programs to supplement, this poppy cultivation and this thing. This were immediately removed. It was just not possible. It's very difficult to control Afghanistan through normal law enforcement agencies. So that is one area we also have to be mindful, and Pakistan doesn't want to give it up. Regarding Pakistan, I would also say that we have a tendency to look at outside world from our own prism. For a long time, we have remained very inward looking as a civilization. And that's what people are saying, that our strategic psyche has been a little deficient. And that's what reflects that a major civilization like India has been shrinking. We need to change. This is an opportunity. We are an independent country. We have to understand the world the way it is. Pakistan is not a normal state. It's a crime syndicate where military is part of crime. They are controlling a territory. Leave aside worrying for Kashmiris. They don't care for anyone. Mr. Sumit said that they only Sunni Wahhabistan, Punjabi Wahhabistan. It is worse than that. Even within them, there are factions. Only thing which unites them is hatred towards Hindus in India. How can, in a globalized world, you can preach hatred towards some community, some race? What have Hindus done to them? If you say it is the Islam and Muslims who came to this world, and a good number of our Hindus converted to them. So this bogey of Hindu, this thing has to be exposed. For a long time, West has been using Pakistan as a strategic tool. Now we have to reach out, stand up to West and tell also them that, look, this kind of fire you have lit, this kind of poison you have allowed to flourish, this is going to affect everyone. So we have to see Pakistan the way it is. And in this thing, I suppose there will be some civilized people in Pakistan, they will stand up, because this kind of political system is dangerous for people of Pakistan, dangerous for everyone. And regarding our strategy, as Mr. Mani said, I suppose we need a comprehensive reform. Our institutions have to be reoriented, not only to fight this, but also to empower us, because our democracy has been very lax democracy, fragile institutions. These have given space to people. I mentioned the issue of this bogey of Hindu terrorism. Shocked till date, all security analysts all over the world are shocked that this is the level of subversion which we had been facing, that somebody at this level is trying to discredit us. And immediately after that, all Pakistani lobbies all over the world, they started propagating a nonsense called Hindu terrorism. Look, we need a firm criminal justice system, transparent and efficient, not applicable, and of course, bring out all the changes with legislation. And your TV keeps running one of my, this thing, subversives need to be filtered out, because it's not a question of terrorism, it's a war on the biggest civilized, most advanced civilization. And as a civilization, we have suffered a lot.
Okay. Sumit, a quick point. Yeah.
I have 4 quick points to make. First of all, in the recent times, we have seen the presidencies of the world, and we can easily follow that. We know what US did with Qasem Soleimani because they thought he is their threat. So we have our options open vis-a-vis anybody who think is a threat to us. We know 3 decades back, Uday, Israel did Munich. They found each of them across the world and hunted them down. Why can't we launch multiple Munichs when we know who are the people, wherever they are, go and eliminate them. Point number 3, anybody who supports them should be seen as an overground worker, because what I'm worried about are the people who come on TV channels, who come on the courts of India, who have made Supreme Court a polite ground, give them intellectual cover fire. Anybody giving them intellectual cover fire should be seen as an overground worker. Take the example of Syed Salahuddin Uday. We know where he is, what is he doing, where is he right now, why can't we go and handle him? And last point, if we could do a Balakot, we could do surgical strikes. Why can't we do targeted strikes? We have the ability for Balakot.
I'm afraid I'm completely out of time, so let's leave it at that.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.